Let's get analysis now from our all-star panel. Kurt Volker is the former U.S. ambassador to NATO and retired Major General James Spider Marks. He served more than 30 years in the Army, including as a senior intelligence officer. He's now head of geopolitical strategy at Academy Securities. Gentlemen, a true privilege and pleasure for me. Thank you so much for coming on. General, I will start with you. You were the senior intelligence officer during the Iraq invasion. You've lived through a war where tactical success doesn't necessarily mean strategic success. Are you seeing any warning signs today that remind you of the Iraq War, or are these conflicts fundamentally different?
Well, no, there are some great similarities. And first of all, let me say that, my prayers, my thoughts go out to the families of those incredible 18 young men and women who sacrificed everything. And it's great to be on with Kurt. I know Ambassador Volker quite well, and I respect his immense service to this nation. What I see going on right now is somewhat troubling, not in that the military execution of tasks is phenomenal. It's unprecedented. We should not be surprised by that at all. The challenge is we're not certain what it's leading to. There's no stated end state that we're that we're cognizant that we can get our arms around. That's the primary concern. I think it's fair to say what we have achieved is within the Iranian regime, which has been decapitated, it's confused, it's a lot of discordant voices you can absolutely understand, but we've kicked a hornet's nest, and how much we want to kick that hornet's nest is entirely up to us. Again, we can determine not to kick it because I think there is clear evidence that additional military firepower against this regime is not necessarily going to alter. Again, I'm not sure what the desired end state is. I don't think it's going to accelerate our conclusion. What I think we've done is, after about 2 weeks, I think we probably could have said we've delayed the nuclearization of their capabilities, their missile capabilities, and anything after that is probably unnecessarily punitive. And we probably could have said we're out now, but we're going to maintain a relationship with Iran that's going to be defined through, hopefully, there could be some economic and diplomatic incentives and or pressures. But we've seen in every diplomatic effort, the Iranians are going to lie about it. They're going to change the rules of engagement. They're going to alter their discourse. So we get that. What that means is if they continue to go down that recidivist behavior of we're going to develop nukes and we're going to continue our R&D on ICBMs, we're going to revisit them militarily. So our diplomatic engagement profile is probably going to be defined going forward for months and months in what we're seeing right now is routine, precisely defined military targeting.
Ambassador, welcome back to the show, sir. If you were advising the president, would your advice actually be different, or have military and diplomatic strategy finally converged in this conflict?
Well, thank you, Hannah, and Spider. It's great to see you too. Been a while. And look, diplomacy works when the balance of forces underneath it are pointing in the right direction. And then you can get a solution through diplomacy. But without that, diplomacy is just talking. It's people talking and then buying time, lying to you, doing other things. That's what's going to happen. So my advice to the president, if I were able to do it, would be to say, look, Mr. President, whether or not this should have started on February 28th, it did.
Right.
And now we've got to go all the way. As long as this regime is in place, we will have a problem. We'll have a problem with the Strait of Hormuz. We'll have a problem with attacks on the neighbors, our allies in the Gulf states, on Israel, on support for the proxies in the region. So we may not have thought about this, or we may not have wanted to do it from the outset, but now the objective has to be to get rid of the regime.
General, speaking of strategy, Trump says the U.S. will bomb and destroy an Iranian bridge or power plant for every new attack by Iran on a ship in the Strait of Hormuz. Is that a good strategy moving forward?
Well, it's not a strategy, it's tactics. And what he is saying is that what is taking place will then be met with a response. So it really is an a reaction counteraction, which doesn't move, again, it doesn't move us to a better place. And the discussion of the laws of armed conflict, like everybody's throwing around the term, this is a war crime. Let's be careful about that, because anything that supports the IRGC is a legitimate target. And guess what? That could be a power generation. That could be road networks where they can deploy their assets. That could be communications capabilities where they can issue orders. So, of course, these are dual use capabilities, but we need to have the legal interpretation of what we're doing a priori so we can go about the business of doing that. And as we know, you get 10 or 15 lawyers in a room together, you're going to get 10 or 15 answers. We have to be able to be clear-eyed about it in advance of conducting these operations. But let's not be quick, not that we are, but let's not be quick about calling this a war crime.
Ambassador, I want to go back to what Secretary of State Rubio said earlier today, that the U.S. is prepared to negotiate with Tehran if it honors its commitments, but that Tehran is not serious about talks. You and I have discussed this. We can't really trust the current regime, but what is the way out when it comes to talking to Iran or its allies?
Right. Well, of course, we would be willing to get what we want by talking if the Iranians would give it to us.
Right.
They're not going to do that. And so it does require some measure of force. And that force, just as the general just said, it has to be linked to a clear objective and a strategy for achieving that objective where we have the means to do it. Right now, as he said, tactically just responding tit for tat, bombing this, bombing that. Our military is incredible. We can hit any target we want to, but that is not necessarily going to lead to any kind of strategic success. For that, we need to know what we're doing. We need to know what the goal is. We need to plan it and develop it. And I have to say, too, if we do that, if we make clear this is the objective, here's how we're going to achieve it, here are the means we're prepared to use for that, we can bring our allies on board. We haven't even really tried. We've just complained. But if we had a clear goal and strategy going forward, we could get a lot of support for that.
And hence the distinction between tactic versus strategy. Now, this next question is for both of you. I want to ask about the Saudi nuclear deal announced today. It's a civilian nuclear agreement that allows the Saudis to enrich uranium on their own soil with American companies supporting the infrastructure. General, can we trust Saudi Arabia with something like this? There's a huge list of reasons not to. I'm going to mention a few. The Saudi Crown Prince has openly talked about developing nuclear weapons if Iran were ever to get one. General.
That's the issue. We've always looked at this. If Iran were to develop a nuclear weapon, the next nation in the region would be Saudi Arabia. The world doesn't need that kind of a nuclear standoff. And also bear in mind, Saudi Arabia has a relationship with Pakistan. It can fast track a nuclear capability simply by an engagement and a shipment with Pakistan. The concern I have with this is relationships with nations change over time. So this has to be one that is inviolate. It must absolutely be solid moving forward because there's no IAEA engagement or protocol for inspections, et cetera, to guide this process. That's the problem moving forward. If we have a great relationship with them and we don't have those inspectors, maybe that's okay. But if there is a change in the relationship and there's always an opportunity to things go sideways in that part of the world, my concern is you don't have any other oversight in terms of what this looks like, and everybody will attribute, malfeasance to the development of that nuclear capability, and they'll try to up the ante accordingly.
Ambassador, your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, very much the same line as General Marks there. But what I would say is there are ways to do this where you can account for any of the uranium going in. You account for the enriched uranium as it's used, you account for the waste product, and you do this on a transparent international basis where everybody can see what's going on. That does not seem to be the case here, and I can't figure out why. It would be easy to do. Now, maybe the Saudis don't want that kind of intrusion, but then if they don't want that, then that raises the worry. Why don't they want that?
Right.
What are they planning to do, really? So I think this could have been done with a lot more patience and control than what we seem to have seen so far.
It's always a pleasure to talk to both of you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your expertise tonight. Ambassador Kurt Volker, Major General James Spider Marks, thank you again.